Hello, today we'll be looking at the sociological perspective of functionalism for the unit of beliefs in society for the AQA board. Now, the aims of today's video is to discuss the functionalist view of religion and really start to unpick it and investigate all the various views and what they believe the purpose of religion is within mainstream society. Now, before we really get too deep into unpicking and evaluating all the various views in terms of functionalism, what we really need to understand is there are various sociological perspectives which try to examine the relationship between religious beliefs, social change, and stability. Some perspectives argue that the main role of religion is to integrate groups of people, and as a result, religion can lead to social stability. However, other sociologists argue religious beliefs can encourage believers to change society or lead to conflict between groups. They see religion as leading to social change rather than stability. So within today's video, we are trying to get an understanding of where functionalism falls within this. Now, functionalist analysis is concerned with the contribution an institution makes to meeting society's needs. From a functionalist perspective, religion contributes to meeting society's needs through providing a shared culture, particularly shared morals, thereby creating harmony and integration as a result, which therefore it is more about this value consensus idea that everyone is getting along and working together as the human body does. So we're going back to that organic analogy within this. Now, really, before we really get too deep into analysing the functionalist perspective on religious beliefs, we need to go back to the basics. We need to get a good old definition. Now, Durkheim here provides us with a good set of a definition, really. We're going to focus on some key terms and focus on this in terms of their understanding of religion in society. Now, Durkheim defined religion as a unified system of beliefs and practices relative to sacred things. As we know, the sacred things is a true emphasis here. That is, things set apart and forbidden which unite into one single moral community. From this basic definition already, we can already get the vibe of they're going to see religion as a uniting force which brings communities together, so they can have got these shared values, these shared norms, and they all operate alongside one another in a peaceful way. Now, Durkheim takes it one step further from that definition which we've just looked at. He argues that when we are worshipping God, we are in fact worshipping society. So society is more important and more powerful than the individual as God is. So therefore, how do we distinguish between this? We've got sacred and profane objects, which then are related to specific religions, and then they also dictate how people act and behave in the presence of these objects as well. Now again, going back to basics, before we really delve into the sacred and profane, we've really got to understand what they actually mean. So, sacred objects, they're rituals and people which are regarded as having special significance and are treated with awe and veneration. So they are looked apart, they are separate, they are forbidden to violate. Whilst profane objects are activities and people which are ordinary, everyday, and not treated as special. Now, if we rack our brains and think about all these sacred objects which we have in our societies, we can see this in action. The Bible, the Talmud, the Shroud of Turin, they are all sacred objects. They are forbidden for you to damage, and they are set apart from everyone else. We've got to understand this point of view and these definitions before we can really delve any further into the functionalist perspective. Because without a clear understanding of these two specific definitions, we're going to get really hung up. The reason why we'd get hung up with this is because actually Durkheim believed that there was nothing intrinsically special about these sacred objects, but instead they were made special by that group, in particular in that religion. So they created the awe, the veneration of that sacred object. So when the Talmud is used within Jewish prayer, they see it, they understand it, they appreciate it, and when it is brought out, it is treated with respect. Meanwhile, ordinary objects would not receive the same respect. And when we refer to ordinary objects, we are talking about profane objects as a result. They are the ones that are not treated and separated from the mainstream society. Now, in lesson, you received a copy of the Elementary Forms of Religious Life, which is the main works of Durkheim here, where he discusses religion and how it is used within non-literate societies, such as the Aboriginal tribes. Now, in his study of Australian Aborigines, Durkheim found that each group had its own totem, an object from the natural world, which they worshipped. The totem represented the social group, and he therefore argued that in worshipping their totem, people were in fact worshipping society. Remembering that this totem would also be treated as a sacred object. It would not be a profane object, something of everyday life. Because it's been granted to them from the natural world, it's been guided there for them to access and use. It would be a sacred object, which would be treated with awe and respect as a result. Now, he carries on this idea of how these objects unite a community. And now he argues the main role of religion is to reinforce shared values and moral beliefs. This helps to strengthen the collective conscience, or the conscience of society. By defining the shared values as sacred, religion gives those values greater power. So there's just a brief definition on there for collective conscience, which is this set of shared beliefs or ideas and moral attitudes which operate as a unifying force within society. By having this shared collective conscience, we are getting society bonded together by the glue of that religious ideology. Now, through this act of collective worship, members of society express approval of the moral bonds that unite them. So the ideas, the morals, the values that are preached from that religious society are then used as that glue to bind everyone together. So they do this through the act of singing of hymns, chanting of particular verses. They feel a sense of belonging to the society and the community as a result. Now, therefore, religion strengthens that social solidarity and creates a sense of unity and belonging within that society. Now, that social solidarity is so important because people will feel increasingly more connected to one another through the similar work, educational, and now specifically their religious beliefs, which can be binding them together further and really bringing that society, that community, that one step closer to one another. Now, as brilliant and as fantastic as Durkheim is in really helping us understand the core foundations of the functionist perspective and their views on religion, there are some problems with his investigation. The main problem here is his study was based on a small number of Aboriginal tribes. They were non-literate, and therefore this makes it highly problematic for us to generalise the findings because it was such a small sample and a unique group as a result. So the idea here is he's being nomothetic to an extent. He's ignoring the individual differences from one another. He's saying that everyone in society would be acting in the same way as this Australian Aboriginal tribe, really ignoring the differences between Western developed societies and this society as a result. Now, within the sociological community, they actually say, hang on here, Durkheim, you took it a bit too far. Most sociologists wouldn't agree with Durkheim, as they will see him going a step too far in the idea that individuals, when worshipping God, are actually worshipping society. Now, Hamilton in 1995 points out that Durkheim's theory, as a result, is only representative of those small non-literate societies. So therefore, him characterising this as what happens in modern society shouldn't happen. Because in modern society, we've got this diversity, which in fact means that the plethora of individuals that are religious are not in fact worshipping society. They must be worshipping the religious values and the totems within that community. Which in turn just makes us aware that how these sacred objects can bind each other, bind the community together with a shared moral consensus, and really increasing that social solidarity within those small community groups. So if we look at the United Kingdom, we are a multicultural community. We have got a plethora of individuals living here. Now, their religions bind them together, and if they're not their religions, their belief systems bind them together. And this in themselves is not the individuals worshipping society. They are worshipping something greater, which is then binding them together, which is enhancing their collective conscious, as well as increasing that social solidarity as a result. Now, poor old Durkheim's really getting criticised quite heavily here. Now, Hamilton argues that Durkheim overstates the degree to which common values influence individuals. Often religious beliefs will be in conflict with mainstream dominant values. So we can often see this when it comes around to protests in terms of religion. So it could be that particular religious sects may feel that the society is not representing their views or really benefiting them. So they will be in conflict with the mainstream or political ideology that is present in the society at that moment of time. And they will rebel. So therefore, in the terms of the functional perspective, they're really saying that it's all for cohesion. It's all for social solidarity. So therefore, it's not a force of change. Whilst Hamilton here is going, hang on, Durkheim, you've got to consider these political groups may feel differently, and they may try to prompt a change within society as a result. Now, the next person that we're going to look at might really start to help Durkheim and his understanding of religion and society. And this is Branislaw Malinowski in 1954. Now, like Durkheim, Malinowski preferred to use small-scale, non-literate societies, specifically focusing down on the Trobriand Islands just off of New Guinea. He focused on the role of religion when facing emotional stress, which threatens the social solidarity of the group. So how does religion help these individuals really adjust and focus and change to the various stresses that they encounter within their lives? Now, Malinowski is going to explore this a little bit deeper for us, and then we're going to look at some criticisms possibly as well. Just a quick little essential note here. Although Durkheim and Malinowski use examples of simple societies, functionalists argue that religion carries out the same basic function in society today. So realistically, even though they are basic societies, we can apply them to the modern world, which is highly problematic, as we know, because we are highly diverse, which in itself could be problematic for this application and this generalizability as a result. Now back to Malinowski, just that little sidebar there. Now he identifies two sorts of events that may create this kind of stress. One being anxiety and tension from life crises, and the other one being unpredictable events and circumstances which produce tension and anxiety. Now we're going to look at each one of these points separately, and we're going to really delve deep into them. Now when we talk about these life-changing events which turn around and create these crises that we experience, we are talking about events such as birth, puberty, as you get older you encounter it, marriage, again as you get older you may encounter it, and death, which is a little bit more depressing. The emotion produced by these events can make it difficult for the individual to continue contributing to society, and therefore all these events are accompanied by religious ritual. to lessen the blow of these life crises and to try help the individual in that community to readjust to an extent. Now, an example here is of a funeral. Provided the opportunity for a social group to express support for the bereaved and help them reintegrate in society. And this is done through the expression of social solidarity. So the use of those religious rituals to then bring and unite that individual back with the community despite their loss of their loved one, which enables them to be reintegrated into that collective conscious and really solidify that glue that unites them as a community. And this is all done through the use of religious rituals and rites. Now, as we know, in the Trobriand Islands here, they were living on an island, vastly underpopulated, so the individuals that were living here encountered quite a lot of unpredictable events and circumstances, which in themselves could create tension and anxiety within the community. So these tended to be accompanied by religious rituals that provided the feelings of confidence and control to help reduce the anxiety of the individuals that may go fishing or the parents of the fishermen. So they just want to really reduce the anxiety that these individuals might be feeling as a result. Now, the idea here is used within the Trobriand Islands further. Now, religious rituals were often performed for individuals that went fishing in their canoes in dangerous and unpredictable deep sea waters. Because they couldn't control it, they felt that these religious rituals would then help protect the individual, and if that poor individual was to pass away, allow them obviously access to wherever they believe they go to in the afterlife. However, when they went fishing in the inland lagoons that were seemingly more calm, there'd be no religious rituals performed. This is because they didn't have the necessity to reduce tension and anxiety by those individuals fishing in the inland lagoons. So, if you went out to sea, you got a religious ritual to reduce that tension and anxiety. Whereas if you were fishing inland, you'd get no religious rituals because there would obviously be less anxiety and tension as a result. Now, Malinowski gets criticised for this. Malinowski has been criticised for exaggerating the importance of religious ritual in helping people cope with stress and uncertainty. So realistically, there are other things that help us deal with the stress and uncertainty that we face in real life. Religious rituals are not the only things that enable us to be able to deal with these life crises. We have to have other mechanisms that are used, such as psychological mechanisms. Now we've done Malinowski, we've spoken about Durkheim, we're going to go on to our good old friend Talcott Parsons now. Now Talcott argues that religious beliefs provided guidelines for human actions and standards which people conducted can be evaluated against. Now, have a little think about the different guidelines that are in society in terms of religion. Now, these religious guidelines really dictate and tell you how you should be acting, and they inform quite a lot of our laws within our modern societies as well. Now, this is a perfect example, the 10 Commandments. Now, this is the bedrock of societal law at this moment in time. They provide us with guidelines on how we should act and how we should behave. You know, they tell us exactly what we should be doing, such as, thou shalt not kill. So, we should not kill other people as a result. Obviously, if you do that in society, what are you greeted with? A conviction and a lifetime in jail, potentially. So, for us, it is important. We can see this in action, particularly more so in the United States. Their whole legal system is based off of these 10 Commandments to an extent. Whilst within the UK, it does form a bedrock. However, maybe we are moving to more of a secular society because our social policy and law is adjusting to our diversity and our multicultural society. Now, Parsons argued that in the USA, Christian religious beliefs underpin the value consensus even for those who are not Christians. And because formal laws and norms have their origin based off of these 10 commandments. And they are what creates those societal norms that everyone has to follow as a result. So, even if you are an atheist, you still have to abide to the laws of the United States, which are primarily based off of religious ideology and doctrine as a result. So, we're going to develop this a little bit further. Now, like Malinowski, Parsons sees religion as dealing with problems that disrupt social life, problems that are unforeseen, unpredictable events, and situations which create uncertainty, such as the volcano exploding on your island. That is an unpredictable event. Unless you're a geographer and you could work it out beforehand, it's very unlikely you would be aware that that would be going on. So therefore, religion is helping those individuals deal with these disruptions to their lives and help them come to terms with them as well. Now, another main function of religion for Parsons was to provide a range of answers to questions about suffering, evil, and the purpose of existence, and so on. Religion helps society to run smoothly and prevents conflict as a result. So really, it's helping those individuals understand and really solidify that social solidarity, because we are making sense of everything and religion helps us do so. Without this, we would possibly be in a state of anomie, a state of normlessness, by which we would not have this social solidarity, this value consensus happening within our society. Now, we're going to move on to Bella. Now, Bella is an absolutely fantastic piece that we have really done to death in lesson. Now, Bella was interested in how religion bonds together society like Parsons, especially multi-faith societies like the USA. So, obviously, we are a multi-faith society as well. What unifies American society is this overarching civil religion. So, the idea that they are worshipping their society, their nation as a whole. Now, Bella shows that in society like the USA, founded on religious freedom, the religion has become worship of Americanism, a kind of secular religion. He argues that civil religion integrates society in a way that individual religions can't, because everyone is bonded underneath this love of the USA, of their nation, rather than individual sects of religious groups. Now, civil religion involves a loyalty to the nation and a belief in God, any God. A true American will pledge the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, singing the national anthem, and phrases "one nation under God." So this is the nation binding together, creating a social solidarity because of where they live, and because they're so fortunate to live within that society. And that creates that value consensus, and that creates those collective conscious which everyone shares as a result. Now, in lesson, we discuss this. Is England a civil religion? Do we worship our society? Do we worship our nation? Now, we know in certain political groups, they do have a nationalist point of view. They do worship society, our nation, to an extent. Now, for us, maybe this isn't so much the case. We're not completely Americanized. We don't have the same extremist views in which Americans would have in terms of bonding or uniting their nations. So, we argue we are not a civil religion just yet. However, we can see sects of it appearing within different parts of our society. Within different regions of the United Kingdom, we can see that this is happening. In terms of this, we had that discussion about Russia. Is Russia a civil religion? Well, according to what we saw in that documentary, to an extent it is. They all worship the Russian ideology, the Russian community. They're heavy or staunch nationalists about Russia, Mother Russia. That is all they care about. And the use of imagery, the way in which they talk about their community and their society, is very different to how we talk about our community and society. We have not got a civil religion, but seemingly you can see this happening in the US, and you can see this happening within places like Russia. So it's not a seemingly abstract idea that Bella is actually proposing. Now let's move on to the criticisms. So the functional perspective emphasises the positive contributions religion has made to society and ignores the dysfunctional aspects. So like when the functionists describe the fantastic nuclear family, they ignore the dark side of the family. Again, they've got rose-tinted glasses on in terms of their understanding of religion. They ignore the dysfunctional, the conflict-driven part of religion that can emerge in society by having opposing ideological doctrines within a community. So, functionalism neglects the instances where religion can be seen as a divisive and disruptive force. For example, in the Middle East conflicts between Palestinian Muslims and Israeli Jews. As well as that, obviously other sociological perspectives would argue that the functionalists ignore how religion maintained a patriarchal society, as feminists would argue, and how it maintains the bourgeoisie ideology within society. So that ruling class, such as our gentlemen here potentially, ideology would continue within society due to the use of religious doctrine. As well as that, in terms of feminists, maintaining that female oppression as a result. Now, another criticism of the functionalist perspective as a whole, it ignores the decline of religious belief and practice, the secularisation, that separation of church and state, which has now seen that religious attendance has started to decline, which is highly problematic in terms of our whole idea of social cohesion. So critics argue that this has meant that religion is no longer acts as the strong source of that social cohesion, that social glue that bonds us all together in society. Now, postmodernists take a slightly different view here. They argue that as society and its values become more fragmented, so no one religion is dominant, thus modern societies are characterised by religious diversity, the growth of sects and cults, which we can see the growth of sects within our communities, within various countries. So we know that it happens, and we know that this is maybe a characteristic of a secular society as a result. Now, the evaluation here. Whilst these criticisms are valid, it is important to note that the central functionist view of religion as being a source of cohesion and order has considerable substance. Durkheim thought religion would decline in the modern rational scientific age. He thought that other institutions would need to fulfill its roles, but feared that this might not happen. Moreover, the idea that religion is a vital part of cohesion and stability is winning considerable support. Multiculturalism is receiving more and more criticisms because it does not produce common values and norms, which then in turn means that social solidarity is not happening, that collective consciousness is not occurring as well. The question remains, however, as to whether the consensus and stability that religion produces are really for the benefit of everyone or the interests of those who control society. So the politicians, Mr. David Cameron, is it really only serving his best interests? Now, final summary points here. So this is the last slide. Now, functionalism is a consensus perspective and sees religion performing positive functions for society and the individual. These include socialisation, social solidarity and integration, preventing anomie, the normlessness, and helping individuals come to terms with life-changing events, so the psychological functions. Now, for us, that is what we've obviously analysed and understood in terms of Malinowski, in terms of the anomie, so really understanding what this means and has created for society. So Durkheim really battles that for us, about how religion acts as a form of that social solidarity and ensures that we've got this social cohesion happening, where all those values and norms are shared, which bind us together, which prevent anomie from happening. Now, functions also identify functional alternatives such as civil religions. Now, Bella is going to be a feature within your sociological lives within this particular unit. You will grow to love him, and you will really have to get a good understanding of what they are talking about in terms of a civil religion. Because actually, in the scientific age, we might be moving away from religions in terms of what we know, but we might be creating a new brand, which is branded by that nationalist point of view. If you have got any questions, please let me know and we can discuss it further.